to our speakers here for them to share briefly on what are their general thoughts on this whole energy transition thing. Maybe let's start off with that. Maybe either Miss Alahdal or Miss Suhana, Mr. Alahdal or Miss Suhana can start.
I would propose Miss Suhana to start. Because
yeah,
leading the transition.
sure. And then when you get a renewable person to start, they will start with something. Boom. Okay. So what are my thoughts about the energy transition? And I say I will start with some our observation and what we've seen. Right? So of late, you've seen the wildfire in Greece, Turkey, and you've seen wildfire in, I don't know, over 14 states in America, killing hundreds, if not thousands. Today, the world have lost 40% of the Arctic ice since 1975. July 2021, last month, was actually the hottest July in the last 142 years. So when you talk about all of these trends, heat wave, drought, cyclone, it's actually becoming more common, especially in Asia. And sad to say that these are all man-made and this is climate change. So energy transition for me is real. Today, when you talk about COVID, people are now more appreciative with the cleaner air that they breathe during COVID as they step out of the house because there are less cars on the road, less factories operating. The world of less pollution seems very feasible. And when you talk about technology, I mean, installing solar panels is perhaps today 10 times cheaper than it was 10 years ago. So energy transition is coming at a pace faster than any of us could have thought would be possible. And one very alarming report actually came out about 2 weeks ago, and this was from IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it set a really gloomy outlook on climate change more than ever. And it is setting the right scene at the UN Climate Change COP26 in Glasgow, where all eyes are actually on this conference. You know, countries are pledging towards net zero, Malaysia have not. And I'm proud to note that PETRONAS in October last year actually announced their net zero carbon ambition by 2050, making them the first Asia company to actually make such a bold statement. So the transitioning is definitely happening, but the pace might not be something that is coming as fast along, dependent on the country, the geography, the economic situation, and many more. But I would say it's coming and it's for sure. So I will just leave it at that for us to ponder and just set that scene for that conversation today. Alahdal.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Suhana. Oh, well, I would usually say I disagree, but I think I'll have to present my what I think about it. I mean, I've got a few slides, maybe 2 slides just to show, and it's something that you know, I always want to talk about something from based on data, right? So let me just put this slide. Can you see the slides? Okay, so the way I think I have my reservation on the transition, the word transition, but the topic is the transition of energy industry. Will petroleum engineering be needed? So my focus is here to tell you, or to to explain what kind of transition are we going to see, and will petroleum engineer be needed in the future, and how that transition will look like. But I mean, it's good to step back. When we talk about transition or energy transition or the consumption and everything, we have to look at, I think, 3 things. One of them is, what is the current consumption, and where is the areas of growth in the consumption, and then what is the percentage of the energy mix? We have to look at that. I know everybody is talking about going green and clean and all these, you know, fancy words, but we have to be realistic. So let me just look at this slide. This slide or data shows you the primary energy consumption right now, which are the highest places where there is the energy consumption. So you will look at, you know, North America, a little bit of in the south, but mainly in, you know, Asia Pac, led by China, India. So these are the areas where there is a growth. I mean, the highest energy consumption is there. Now let's go to the second slide, which talks about the primary energy consumption. And the reason why I wanted to show you the difference between the current energy consumption, which is where are the highest energy consumption located is in these countries, but look at where is the growth is at totally different countries. So the current energy consumption was here and here. Now the growth, where is the highest growth in energy consumption is happening in South America and Middle East, China, Australia. And that tells us something. There is an energy growth, right? So there is a demand for more energy. Is either, and I'll explain to you later when it comes to China and Australia. China, half of the energy consumption is coming from coal. I mean, just to be clear, we're not talking about green energy here. So this tells you that there is a growth for energy. Now we've looked at the energy consumption and the energy growth in consumption, where is this happening, and that tells us that there will be a continuous growth. Now look at this slide. What does this tell you? It tells you what almost 84% of the global energy consumption comes from fossil fuel. And this is pretty clear to us that fossil fuel led by oil, then number 2 is coal, which is disappointing, to be honest, that coal is the second energy source so far up until today, and it continues to grow. So 84% is coming from oil and gas or fossil fuels. What does this tell you? I mean, if there is a change, there is what I call it, instead of an energy transition, it's more like a growth. There is no transition. And I'll show you why in my next slide. There is no transition. There is more or less of a growth. So my first and second slide showed you where is the current energy consumption, where is the growth happening. This slide tells you what is the split of each energy consumption coming from where? Oil, coal, gas. To those who say that get rid of oil, I mean, you get rid of oil, nothing will happen, the whole world will collapse. I mean, I'm talking reality and facts. When the pandemic happened all over the world, the only industry that continued to operate is oil and gas and health. So it tells you something. It tells you that oil is integrated in our life. So my next slide is more or less of the primary energy consumption by source over the years. So, and that is bringing me to the subject which I said that I don't agree on the word transition. It's more of the growth of energy industry or the growth of energy consumption. Because if you look at here, transition means you're moving from one place to another or from one source to another. We're not doing that. I mean, look at what happened over the past 200 years, right? I mean, when the oil and gas industry started in the 1850 or somewhere around there and started to grow, there is a growth. If you just look at coal, right, the consumption, it continued to grow despite there is an oil and gas, right? What is the answer to that? The answer to that, there is an energy consumption growth, and that is happening all over the world. That the population is growing. There is more demand for energy from the industrial, from the transportation, logistics, and all these things. That there is more demand for energy. So we can't talk about shifting from this to that because trust me, if you, I mean, look at the renewables. It's just a small percentage. So what I want to come up from these 3 slides is the idea that well, there is instead of saying that there is a transition, we have to admit all of us that there is a growth in the energy consumption, and that all of us, whether you are from oil and gas, from renewables, we have to work together to meet that demand. I mean, we are happy that there is a growing supply from renewables, but at the same time, we're not happy how they are taking it, the media. So I mean, just answering the last question, which is, will petroleum engineering be needed in the future? Just look at the slide and you judge by yourself. Oil and gas is still there, and we have more than almost 100 years to go. So you guys are still needed. I think that's answered my my question. Back to you.
Thank you for sharing your insight, Ms. Suhana and Mr. Alahdal. That was a great appetizer, I believe, to start off the event. So let's now begin with the first question. I just want to relate like what have been said by both Ms. Suhana and Mr. Alahdal just now. Currently, non-renewables like oil, gas, and coal still make up a significant portion of the energy consumption, right? And that brings me to my first question, which will be addressed to both of you again. Do you think that this portion would change? Would it decrease? or remain the same, or would it increase now that we have a certain change which will happen as addressed by Ms. Suhana just now? And if yes, if these portions were to change, how would it impact the demand for petroleum engineers? Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll start first. And I really like the slide that Alahdal actually showed just now. So there's the supply demand, which is very true when you talk about the demand. With the economy, the industrial revolution, and all that, you see a lot more demand coming up. But the other part is from the perspective of energy mix. So how much of this will be coming from oil, coal, and gas, where when we talk about where the world is heading, there's a lot more need towards decarbonization, right? One of the key criteria from Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement is how do we actually maintain the temperature of the world to no more than 2 degrees. To no more than 2 degrees. And I'll just take a step back from this understanding. And I think a lot of us need to really have this understanding about how oil and gas are actually used in everyday life. So when you talk about oil and gas, your oil is very, very relevant, because when you talk about oil, you typically use it in your petrochemical usage. So the plastic that you use, or even the makeup that you apply, right? So today there's no commercial replacement. So when you talk about oil, it will still make a very significant portion of the mix that you see today. But on the other hand, when you talk about power, and this is where coal and gas comes in from the energy mix that is a lot more relevant, because there are already alternate solution or a more sustainable solution towards decarbonization. So when you talk about regardless of supply demand mix, etc., we see there's a lot more shift towards moving from coal towards something a lot more sustainable. And when we talk about a lot more sustainable, people talk about either gas, because it is the cleanest form of fossil fuel, or you talk about a shift towards renewable. So this is where people like me will come in to offer a greenest energy solution to the world. I will come in and power your homes and businesses using solar and wind power. Okay, but when will this happen? So this is the concept of that transition would actually be really important. If you ask me 10 years from now, I would say the shift will probably be not as much. Oil will still be relevant. Gas would still need to be there as the base load. You would see some shift where people would actually move from coal towards something more sustainable. And this would all be relevant when we talk about today what we have always termed as energy trilemma, right? Today, people are still reliant on this trilemma where energy has to be affordable, accessible, and sustainable. So when you talk about developing and emerging countries like Malaysia and other parts of Asia, Africa, and many more, right? We still have population that want to rely on cheaper form of energy on our everyday life. So save the world, or let's have a sustainable future may be important for me, but it will not be important to Makcik Kiah who lives in Kampung Pasir Mas and struggling to put food on the table for a family of 8. So, and besides, when you talk about Malaysia, there's already a national obligation to extract this mineral out. So you could actually benefit the people of Malaysia, and we could all benefit from tax, royalty when the oil and gas company produces. Well, this is, the reality for the next 10 years, very short term. But having said that, 20 or 30 years from now, when you would see the shift as, there's going to be a lot more demand coming in, but there is a greater need to decarbonize, and you will see that the cost curve of renewable will become a lot cheaper than it is today. And maybe that time, when you talk about energy, renewable will become a lot more apparent. And even when you talk about oil, your petrochemical product, your lipstick today will be made with some other cheaper, more sustainable organic source. So I would say the transition is real. So in the next 20, 30 years, you would see this shift. And it's up to us to see what's the best balance between oil and gas and renewable source coming in.
I think I totally agree with you, Ms. Suhana, especially when you talk about the reality, right, in the ground. It's going to take long, that's for sure. And that's something that I like. But the issue here is what you talk now is what we don't see in the media. I mean, if you look at the media, how they are making it look like. I mean, even me myself, when I read some of these articles, I feel like by tomorrow they're going to stop producing oil, and it's going to be all covered by from solar, from wind. This is seriously, this is what is happening in the ground. The media is making it look like a big deal, and which is not true. And that is why I mean, the reason why these guys invited me for this talk, especially today, is because they seen my comments on LinkedIn when I post about against the renewable. Just to make it clear to all here that I'm not against renewable. What I'm against is the fact that there are too much lies out there, that they are attacking the oil industry. They are not telling the truth. They are not telling the truth that the oil and gas industry is the core of industrialization, is what powers the world right now. And they make people feel that if we shift from oil and gas, let's stop it. It's just gonna happen overnight, which is not true. And this kind of things is happening, and it's turned into political thing. And I mean, you look at US right now. If you look at the Republicans, they're talking about oil and gas, and Democrats more into renewables. So the whole idea of renewable and oil and gas is no longer of what we need. It's more of people fighting each other, and that's not true. So just answering the question from Dave, I think I'll show you. Let me know if you can see the slide, right?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is what I just want to tell you, that this is what is happening in the ground. I mean, if you look at, this is the regional energy consumption in 2019. It's not much different 2020 and 2021, not too much. So what you will realize is there is is different from one region to another when it comes to the energy mix. Now, take for example Asia Pacific. In Asia Pacific, what do we have? We have coal is the highest energy source. Okay, now look at, for example, Europe. Coal is a small percentage. The rest is coming from what? It's coming from oil. They talk in Europe, when they talk in the media, you feel like they all just powering the whole continent from renewable, which is not true. Renewable is just like 20% there. The whole thing is coming from where? From oil, gas, and coal. Even in Europe, the source of all these green energy drive and clean and things that, to be honest, it kind of pisses me off sometimes. But back to the topic. So Middle East, you see, it's all coming from where? From oil and gas. North America. So when we look at I mean, answering the question, back to Dave's question, she asked about how it will look like in the future. Well, renewable, how much it will cover. Right now, you see my percentage here, it's somewhere around 15 to 16% coming from renewable, right? And if you dig deeper into the solar, hydroelectricity and nuclear, it's all small percentage, 5%, 3%, 4%. It's not that much. So to answer the question, what will happen in the next few years is going to increase, take, for example, 1 or 2% over the next few years. But the problem here, what people don't see is when we talk about increase in renewable, you cannot just limit that, how to put it in a perspective. We have an energy consumption. There is a certain amount of energy consumption per year. When there is a growth in the percentage of each energy consumption, we cannot forget that there is a growth in the total energy consumption. All percentage, you see, the oil continues to hold the same percentage. Maybe over the last few years, it went down, but it went down from a bigger energy consumption total. That's what people forget. So you cannot just talk about certain numbers. You have to look at the overall picture. Oil and gas will continue to hold. You see, I've looked at some of the reports coming from different countries. Even the best estimate, which coming from renewable, I mean, a greenwash organization that they talk about green, they cannot eliminate or they cannot reduce the fossil fuel percentage in the total energy mix to a 60%. They cannot. The best estimate by 2050 cannot go down to 50%. Means that what I mean is by 2050, these green guys, they think that 50% of the total energy consumption is going to come from fossil fuel. This is the best estimate with all this greenwash. Now, back to a bit to the reality, I think it's not going to go down to that. I think it will just continue to grow. We have too much oil that's going to be produced. The idea for the oil and gas industry is more or less, how can we produce it in a cleaner way? And net energy, all these kind of nice terms. When we talk about net energy, I think I posted about it as well recently. People think about it, net energy is going to be zero carbon, which is totally wrong. Net energy means, for example, PETRONAS. When PETRONAS announced a net energy or net zero target, it doesn't mean PETRONAS by 2050 is going to produce a zero carbon. What it means is PETRONAS by 2050 is going to produce this certain amount of carbon or emissions, but at the same time, PETRONAS is going to offset that carbon by doing investing in clean energy, by putting carbon into the ground, EOR, all these kind of sort of offsetting the carbon that you produce. So it's not about zero. There is nothing called zero. The question again, my answer is by 2050, I think I'm looking at 25% coming from renewable, 75% still fossil fuel. Thanks.
Thank you for the answers, Mr. Alahdal and Ms. Suhana. Those were very beneficial points, and I believe because most of us students here, it gave us the insight of what should we expect in the next few years to come and how would it impact the demand for us as a petroleum engineer. And thank you for answering the question. Now, the second question would be for Mr. Alahdal. So, in your opinion, in which category should major oil and gas companies invest their money in the next few years to come, considering that you mentioned just now, most probably the renewable will grow, but on top of that, the non-renewable energy would grow equally as well. So do you think major oil and gas company should invest where in terms of in the next maybe 10 to 15 years?
I think my short answer would be they have to invest in renewable. The reason why I'm saying this is because there is no way they're not going to invest in oil and gas. They are investing in oil and gas. The money that is taken to invest in renewable is coming from oil and gas. And let's just be proud of this, because every guy or every outlet media that talks about green and everything, we have to remind them that the money that is put in investment, I mean, especially I have to remind Ms. Suhana, the money that is put in investment on your energy project is coming from oil and gas. And we're really proud of this as a petroleum engineer. The core of PETRONAS as a company, or PETRONAS, Exxon, the core of this company is one thing. It's called the reservoir, and it's called oil. Without that oil, they will never exist. So this is something that we have to remember. So coming back to the question, yes, they have to reinvest in renewables, and especially national oil companies. And I've put this previously in my LinkedIn. The reason why I see that PETRONAS, Aramco, Iran Oil Company, all these companies, they have to invest in renewable. The reason why is because international oil companies, the likes of Shell and Exxon, they are going that direction. And the reason why they're going to that direction is not because renewable is better. No, renewable is struggling when it comes to break even right now. But they see that that's the future, which looks like it's gonna happen, but it's in the long term. But the real drive for these big companies to go into renewable is because they don't have resources. They don't have the resource. They don't have the reserves, to be clear. Exxon doesn't own any. I mean, like PETRONAS. PETRONAS own the resource, the fields in Malaysia. They have that, and they expanded internationally, so they can invest in Canada and everywhere. They're becoming like international oil companies. So international oil companies are worried, and that's why you see them going into renewable to make themselves distinct, or they want to become an energy company sourcing energy, not just oil. And that is the reason, because they are losing it. So why I advise national oil companies to go into that direction, because national oil companies, they own the reserves. They own 79% of the global crude oil and gas reserves. Just to be clear, 79% is owned by national oil companies. Why they have to go into renewables? Because they have to be strong. They have to capture the whole market. Otherwise, they will be left behind. That you own the reserve, and you will be looked at as a dirty company just producing oil. So they cannot do that. They have to go into renewables. National oil companies, they will do it. international. They will do it right away, because especially from Europe, because Europe has no reserve. They have nothing in there. So the only for them to survive is to go into energy. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Alahdal, for that. I can see that Ms. Suhana is, maybe do you want to add something on this? Because as Mr. Alahdal mentioned, we would be investing in renewables, but on top of that, we should be investing in oil and gas as well, because that is what drives our investment towards renewables. So in your opinion, since you are the head of the new energy of PETRONAS, to what extent should we invest renewables and oil and gas? What is the what do you think is the optimum ratio in which we should invest in renewables and oil and gas? Thank you.
Okay, that is a very hard question, but okay, because this is about portfolio mix and all that, I do tend to agree. I do tend to agree, because I do come from an oil and gas background, and but what I do see when you talk about where the world is moving, there's a lot more need for ESG, environmental social governance, and when you talk about especially public company, there are a lot more shareholder pressure to show that you've got a high ESG in your portfolio. So when you talk about the right investment, today oil and gas still give you a great return, right? That's why the petroleum engineers are paid very well. People like us in renewable are not, we're just very marginal business. But because of this reliance on ESG and the need to actually show that you are socially responsible, maybe two options. For me, it's about how do you continue to invest in oil and gas that give you that high return, but making sure that the technology that you use are able to actually provide low carbon solution, right? Because I mean, it's not just about trying to show to the shareholder, but it's about trying to do no harm to the world as well. But secondly, absolutely, you see the trend that the oil and gas companies today are moving towards putting a certain portion of the investment into renewable, not just from ESG perspective, but because this is where the world is heading as well. So you see BP doing this, you see Total doing this, everyone is actually announcing like 100 gigawatt kind of commitment. And while before this, you see that a lot of these announcement and investment are coming from the European. But today, after Biden administration and with the new government, you see there's a lot more appetite by the American companies to do this, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and all that. So definitely, if you talk about where to spend, I would say, yep, oil and gas is still your core, but invest in technology because you need to actually move towards low carbon solution in the future. But renewable should make up a significant portion of your investment as well.
I think I would. I don't feel like I answered the question. I was more like making Ms. Suhana happy that we should invest in renewables. But let me get back to the question. So when it comes to the percentage, I think even I'm taking it from PETRONAS recent report 2020. There is a percentage of allocating, I think, capital investment around 5%. If you look at all the international companies, that the percentage doesn't go more than 10%. This is up until today, but I think going forward is going to go between 10 to 20%. That will be the highest. That's what I think. 80% will still be put in the traditional kind of investment, oil and gas. But when it comes, if we look at it this way, that they should invest 20% in renewables, 80%, and that why I say 20-80 is coming back to my previous slide, which shows you guys that 80% of the global energy mix right now is coming from fossil fuel. So you should invest 80%. If 84% is coming from fossil fuel, you should put the investment there. The other 14% or around there, around 16, is coming from renewable. You should be investing 16%, but let's drive it up to 20. So you have 80-40, 80-20. Now back to the 80% that should be invested in oil and gas. It shouldn't be invested only in finding new oil because we have too much oil. In fact, as petroleum engineers, you guys, all of you should know that the current recovery factor is somewhere around 25. I mean, sometimes less than that to 40% recovery factor means that this is how much we extract from the reservoir. The rest is left behind. So that is one area of investment. We should invest more money into getting more oil out of the ground, and more money into getting that oil in an efficient way. Number two, we should invest in new technology. When I talk about new technologies, it has to go from the extraction area where flaring in US, too much gas is being flared, and that is contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions, right? That's one area. There are so many technologies out there, and there should be more investment in new technologies that stops or makes a stop for flaring. There is also how do you run your offshore platform, and instead of running it by gas, you run it by solar panels. And these kind of investment to just make it a net means that you're producing oil for a great purpose to run things and to build and to create new for health, for medical, for running countries and running the world. But at the same time, you do that in a nice way, which is going green and renewable and using, wind turbine in your platform or solar panel, this kind of investment. There should be more into that, into this kind of investment, more or less into carbon capture. And that is one way, I mean, just to put it out there, carbon capture and utilization storage. This is more or less an EOR concept where you take the CO2, you inject it back into the reservoir, you produce more oil. You're doing two things. You're getting more oil out of the ground, and you're reducing the carbon footprint. This kind of investment, oil and gas. The reason why I'm upset or angry with Shell, with Exxon. No, Exxon is good for me, to be honest. They're still holding back. But Shell and BP, the reason why I'm angry with them is they keep posting this kind of green picture in their LinkedIn and everywhere. It's not about just talk. And then the Equinor, all these companies, they should be more like, they cannot just, when people are looking at oil and gas as a dirty, which is because of the media, it's not because of it itself, it's because how human, it's about behavior. If we are responsible and if we know how to do it, you see the plastic issue, it's not about the plastic itself, it's about how we as human behave, throwing plastic out there. And that's the issue. It's not the plastic itself. You can take the plastic and throw it properly, recycle. There should be no issue, but it's about the human. So the way I look at it is oil and gas companies should invest more in making oil and gas more efficient, reduce the carbon footprint. And this is something that I really wish these companies, and instead of talking bad about, let's say Exxon or Shell, BP, instead of making green and talking too much about the green and all this posting green pictures, they should be putting more effort into how do we run our operation in more efficient way? How do we convince the public? Because it's about public misconception. And I have talked about it previously, that the oil and gas is dirty. It's not. It's just about how people perceive the oil and gas and how the media put it. As oil company, you should invest too much money in making that right, and that putting out to the people that what is really coming from oil and gas. Everything around you, like even the makeup on women's faces, is coming from oil and gas. So seriously, this is something that is missing out there. When a woman goes out to protest in the street talking about that, oh, we need to get rid of oil and gas, we don't want to keep it in the soil, they don't know what is really coming from oil and gas. And this is a message I always want to put out there. We need to understand what is really coming out of oil, what is the reality behind oil, and we have to support our industry. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Alahdal and Ms. Suhana, for that answers. That was really profound, especially regarding the public misconception. I think we should really address that, since a part of the reason why we have so much pressure on being called dirty is because of the public misconception. So moving on to our third question, and this would be addressed to Ms. Suhana. And just to relate what you said previously regarding the investment for those countries which are not able to adapt to the energy transition, can you elaborate a little bit more on this? What do you think is the future for those countries who may not be able to adapt to the energy transition? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So on this question, right, countries that may not be able to adapt, and what you see today is that by now you see that because of my oil and gas background, I've seen both pictures, right? But what I do see also is the fact that the world is moving towards more renewable. You see that there's a lot more pressure into getting oil and gas companies and the country to move towards oil and gas. And I do like Alahdal's comment just now when we talk about this other company. A couple of months ago, one of the major oil and gas company was actually sued and they won the suit. And this is very significant because what happened was that the Dutch court actually ruled that the climate change activists, their vision of actually asking the company to reduce their greenhouse emission by 45% by 2030 is valid. So this would actually set a really great precedent towards any other suit to other oil and gas companies, and what we would see in the future in terms of how oil and gas company going to be operating. So this was major, but these are in countries that have a lot more awareness and advocacy towards climate change, Europe. Okay, but what do you see in countries that are not? And these are, a lot of it are actually in developing countries that are still trying to mature their economy. So today you see different pace in terms of transition between developed and developing countries. You see a lot of these countries in developed world are pledging towards net zero carbon in 2050. But on the other hand, developed countries are not moving at the same pace. I mean, we see China announce its net zero in 2060. Is that India until today, they have not made any commitment at all. And these are the two biggest emission producer in the world, beside US and Europe, who have actually announced a much bigger carbon reduction target. So there's always this debate between the two. So why are we, the developing country and emerging country, have to keep pace with the developed country and pay for their sin in the past when they have emit as much carbon in the past and develop their own country while we are at their stage maybe 30 to 40 years ago? So I always believe that there's always check and balance. And while we've got Kyoto Protocol, we've got Paris Agreement, we're moving towards COP26 and we're trying to fix all of this, it's about how do you get the developed country, help the developing country find the right balance and support a much more sustainable solution through subsidies, incentives, so that you could actually spur green development. And it's about being equitable and leveling the playing field. So while that is important, there are a lot of efforts to be done. I mean, for me, I in Malaysia, I do hope that we could have actually done so much more and pledged so much more, because there's a lot more opportunity and things that you can do. But it's worthwhile to actually note that there are so much that have actually been done already today. So it's about finding the right balance. It's about how do we, when we talk about this ecosystem, having the developed country support the development country rather than putting penalty and pressure, because everyone would actually move at their own pace. So it's about increasing the portfolio mix, the energy mix, and finding that right balance through the right ecosystem.
Yeah, I just to add on Ms. Suhana's comment, I think she got a really valid point there. And the fact is, just to let you know, Ms. Suhana, the reason behind this, the developed and the developing, why there is a contradicting, how to say, trends. I think it is more or less to do with this slide, which I showed just now. Why I wanted to show you all this is we all have to ask ourselves the same question, which is, why do we have a different energy mix trend for different region? What is the reason? I mean, before we talk about any any direction of the energy trend or who should follow what, the Paris Agreement and all these things, we should understand that the reason behind this. The reason behind it, the real reason is the resource distribution. And that's what I just want to put it out there very clear, that resource distribution is the reason behind all this. When you see Asia Pacific is consuming too much coal, you ask yourself, what is the reason? They have too much oil, too much resource of coal, and is very cheap in Australia, in Indonesia, in China. That is the reason why they consume too much coal. When you see Middle East, it's just oil and gas. Well, the reason why they have too much of that resource there. When you see Europe, they're more into, you see, the biggest percentage of renewable is coming from Europe. What is the reason behind it? They don't have resource of fossil fuel. They don't have enough resources. They are buying from the Middle East. They are buying from Asia Pacific. They're buying from Russia. Russia controls them. It's more of an energy security rather than what we really want to do. And when you see the Paris Agreement or the European countries is trying to enforce their propaganda or the direction of let's have a clean, then China and Middle East after themselves, hey, you don't have resources, I have it, I produce it cheaply, why do you want me to follow your rules? I mean, there is a reality behind. We can talk about how green or how clean we will go, but in the ground, reality is always make it, how to say, they control the policy making. And that is, this should be clear to everybody. While everybody want to go in the same direction that let's increase this and reduce that, but in the ground, it will always go back to the basics, which is who has what. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Suhana and Mr. Alahdal. I believe that answered the question as to how do we ensure that this renewable development is contributed by countries. So I like the point pointed by Ms. Suhana just now, in which developed countries should actually help emerging countries, and also that would inherently depend on the resource that the country have, as what Mr. Alahdal pointed just now. So the next question would be for Mr. Alahdal, and this is pertaining to the petroleum engineer's career. Do you think, in your opinion, how can petroleum engineering graduates adapt and prepare themselves for work experience during this energy transition? What are the skills that they should acquire, in your opinion? Thank you.
Okay, that's the question I was waiting for. Disclaimer here is my background is petroleum engineering, and I really love petroleum engineering. I love the oil industry itself, and I graduated back in 2014, and at that time I had a chance to go to join Schlumberger. I lost it because of the downturn. Just started started 2014 in November. I still remember, and that was the time when I lost all the chances to it. So there was a kind of a difficult situation where I had to spend like 1.5 years doing nothing, and I managed to stick to the oil and gas industry, get back into it, and I spent too much money, I spent too much time with no job, but I did it because I really want to go back and be in this industry. And to the point where I didn't care about salary when I started. I didn't care about anything. What I wanted to do is I wanted to go from a jobless guy, graduated during the downturn with no job, into someone who really, right now, I joined a company. I turned that company from a loss into a profit. I led the company. I managed everything. I work in another company. I am running contracts or the jobs that, instead of me back then, 2014, trying to get a job with Schlumberger, now trying to work with Schlumberger as my client. You see, there is a different. So it's more or less of what you guys have to do. So looking back at what happened, it's not just to put it out there. What is happening right now with the petroleum engineering is not just about the transition. Just to be clear, it's about the downturn. So it's a combination of two things. Back 2014 up until 2019, it was more of to do with the downturn, and this is a natural cycle in the industry. Everybody go through it. If you ask senior people in the industry, they know it. They know it very well. You have like 6 to 10 years max upward, and then you go down like 5 or 6 years, and that's how it has been always the cycle. But what happened is when we were going up in the cycle back in 2018, then all this, I mean, it has started before, the green drive and all these things, but it become more of a media thing, and then the companies just jump into it, and so it become very difficult. So you see companies now it has changed how companies operate. If you look at operators, they're now trying to cut manpower or the headcounts of theirs, so it's reducing that. And what they're trying to do is improve the efficiency. So if you're a petroleum engineer, they want you to do something else extra as well, and they're trying to reduce from four guys doing the same thing into one guy doing it all. This is happening, and we see it. People are pressured to do it, and they have to learn it, and they have to do it very quickly. This has translated into a crisis for those who want to join the industry, like me back then, and like many of you out there who are just graduating from universities want to join the industry. You find it difficult, but the problem is, don't let this, I'll just have to call it as it is, lies about the green future and the oil industry just going down. It's a lie. Okay, don't let it, you just don't let it change your mind or change your thinking about what you really want and whether you want to go into another. Just you always have to filter. There are too much noise out there. You just have to filter it out, and you have to know the basics. The basics says, which I just presented before, that the oil and gas industry is there to stay. It's going to stay for 100 years down the road. I cannot say beyond that, but 100 years is going to stay there. It's going to be the leading energy mix. Source of energy is going to be there. So there will always be a need for reservoir engineers, because like I mentioned previously, the core of each oil and gas company is the reservoir. And petroleum engineering, all of you out there, I think the best course that you can take, or the subject in your petroleum engineering, which you should really have to focus on, is the reservoir engineering. If you can master that, no one out there in the industry, or the mechanical guys, electric background, mechanical, they cannot do the reservoir. So the first thing back in the university, focus on the reservoir engineering course subject. Once you do that, if you can go out there and become a reservoir engineer, that is fine. Production engineer, that is fine. But you will not be able to secure that job, because in each company, there is a number of people who are just a reservoir engineer or production, not too many. The rest of the occupation out there, or a position that you can get, is more to do with, drilling, completion, a lot of other positions, which you have to compete with other courses. People who graduate from other courses, they can do it better than you. Because you see, the idea behind that is more to do with adaptability. So when I went to Schlumberger, I think I was working back there in Yemen, and when I went to the base, I was the only guy petroleum engineering. I was the only guy in the whole base as a petroleum engineering background. They were looking at me, what are you doing here? All of them mechanical, electrical. And why they are doing that? Because they can easily learn it. The drilling and all these kind of things, they can easily learn. So what it prevents you as a petroleum engineer from doing that? Nothing. You focus on the core, which is reservoir. If you can get that job, go for other areas of oil and gas. You can also go for business development, sales. Nothing stops you. It's about you. I started with more to do with sales, and I wanted to do business development, and back into technical, and then I lead a company. You have to do it all if you really want to stay in the industry. So just to put it very clear, there will be what we call it is the existing occupation or position. It will evolve. It will become more to say is you have to do more things as one person. You have to learn that. And this is for people who are in the industry. If you want to survive, you have to do more as a person. Number two, there will be new position open, which is due to the drive of renewable. This will happen, and you have to learn what is out there. Data analytics. I think we will have what we call it carbon emission engineer, safety, all these kind of position that will come up due to the need or the transition. I don't like the word transition, but I'll have to say it because everybody's talking about the transition. But there will be more positions that will open. So you just have to keep yourself, you have to adapt, learn how to adapt. You have to compete out there, like I told you. You have to compete with others, and you have first thing is rely on the basics, which is learn the petroleum engineering, the reservoir. Then go to adaptability. Make sure that you need to step into the industry and prove yourself first. Don't care about anything else. The money is not something. Once you go in and you prove yourself, you're gonna stick there. But the most important thing, which really helped me to stay in the industry, was one key skill, which is how to put it in word. It's more or less, you should be the guy who create opportunities, not taking advantage of opportunities. When I joined a small company back I think it was in 2017, that company was at loss, right? And I didn't look at it that way. If I was a guy who takes take advantage of opportunities, I will go for a company that is established with a position that I can just secure and I don't have to worry about anything. But no, I was the guy who create opportunities. I joined a company with 0 project. The first year I did is I secured a first project. And then after that, I started hiring people. And then after that, 1 year after another, we grow into a kind of a good company with instead of loss, and we are making profit, we're making good project, we're progressing. So the key for all of you, which I always, if there is one advice from me, is don't take advantage of opportunities. Don't be the guy who look for opportunities. Be the person who create opportunities for you, because once you create that opportunity, you will stay there and you will help others. So this is my key message for all the petroleum engineers out there.
Yeah. Okay. So if I can just add on that, right? So I think I'll just start with when Alahdal mentioned about lies. So lies depend on where you are. So when you talk about the Europe, where all of this, when we talk about all these oil majors who has been pushing towards the green agenda, so they come from the European region where the movement is very strong. The environmental pressure is a lot more apparent, and the pace of transition is actually much faster. So if you're talking, for me, honestly, petroleum engineer, probably not a geography that you want to target if you're thinking about working in Europe. But okay, sorry. But when you talk about our home country, especially Southeast Asia, at least for the next 10, 15 years, right, you would still see oil and gas, besides coal even, will still dominate the energy space. But while this is true, what you also see is that people are becoming more aware of carbon emission and the impact to global warming, or the multiple natural disasters that you see today, from flood, bushfire, and many others resulting from global warming. I mean, you could take Yan, for example, the flood that we see today. So, I mean, it's quite interesting, and you are seeing this impact. But I do still see that there are a future for petroleum engineers, and these are some of the things that I think you could really work on and sharpen your skill. Firstly, I say that technology is important, and you should keep up to date with the latest technology or what the other side of renewables players are doing. And this would be key, as maybe in the future you would want to make the shift later, but today you're able to actually enjoy both worlds. For example, if you are working on high pressure reservoir, I mean, Alahdal, you can add in, but there are opportunities to see how you could leverage on your skill to work on geothermal, another renewable solution. Today, Southeast Asia, we've got a very large concentration of high CO2 field, and Malaysia is actually the current champion for highest level of carbon emission in upstream operation. Second is Indonesia, and then you see Saudi, Qatar, Australia. But there is a need to decarbonize so that you become a lot more relevant in the future. So there is this larger obligation to come up with low carbon solution, either through application of technology to reduce carbon emission. So you talk about carbon capture, CCS, CCUS, or reduce flaring, or apply operational excellence in the field that you operate. So you must make yourself becoming relevant by coming up with low carbon solution. So it's about how do we move ahead with the pace of technology while still put that sustainability at the back of our hand. So that's one, technology. But secondly, I think it's more about, it's also important to become relevant with keeping yourself updated with the latest news, market trend, because we all know it. Knowledge is power. So leverage on that. So I would just say, learn about my side of the world, renewable. Watch closely the development of the UN climate change, COP26, that's happening on the 31st October to 12th November, is very, very important. And this will become the real deal breaker. So the more you empower yourself with the necessary knowledge, the better you become in equipping yourself. So, when a green, sustainable lady like myself come up to you and say, stop oil development, you could say, kakak or makcik, I know all about climate change. We are in this together, and we promise to come up with low carbon solution so that we will reduce emission, but we continue to provide reliable, cheap energy to the nation. So come with a much more informed knowledge so that you'll be able to actually, become better when you talk about the impact of oil and gas and how it works within the climate change or renewable. But thirdly, above all, and I can never say this enough, even though today we talk about skill set, we talk about how to become relevant, but the other part that I think is very, very important is actually soft skill. So many times, and it doesn't matter whether you're a petroleum engineer, a project engineer, renewable engineer, it doesn't matter. I mean, many times engineer become just engineer because we talk about facts and statistics without emotion and sincerity. And I really like to talk about this to young professionals, because for me, invest in yourself to become a better version of you. So when I was the president of Young Professional Club in PETRONAS over a decade ago, one of the very few things that I did was that we chartered the first Toastmaster Club in our office in KL. Because for us, public speaking and practicing to speak in a safe environment matters. So that's why I like going to talks and giving session, and then to practice my rusty public speaking skills, because you only become better when you practice a lot. But from that Toastmaster experience, I see how people have grown and improved their confidence, and that is itself very rewarding. So whatever field that you do, invest in that soft skill, and that's how you become a better version of yourself. So maybe out of topic, but I thought I just wanted to put that out. Yep.
No, I think this is very on topic, Ms. Suhana, and I totally agree with you on that. While talking about the skills, I think I just went through the comments quickly, and there is a comment from Noor, and he was talking about apologies. I simply don't agree that we keep suggesting graduate to do this, to do that, just because the industry is shifting. Maybe we can do the part, they can do the part, and it's not entirely their fault. It is the university job to detect and such shift. I just, because this is very important, and this is related to all the students. I'm sure so many of the audience are students. So that's the reason why I just picked this question to talk about it. And I have to share personal experience about this. Number one, I agree with you there that the university has to do something. They have to keep up with the pace of the industry changes. That's true. But you cannot blame the university. You cannot blame anyone, to be honest. I studied in UTM, and I took advantage of every opportunity the university offered, the university SPE chapter there. There is too much one of the best things I like about universities in Malaysia, that they support the students. So say, for example, I'll give you an example. If I wanted to go to attend a conference in Kuala Lumpur, they will give me, as a representative of the university, they will give me a car, a driver to pick me up and send me to KL. That was the best thing. And I take advantage of that. I took advantage of getting sponsorship from companies just to sponsor me, go attend a talk or event at KL or Indonesia or China. And I took advantage of that. Why? Because as a student, you have so many opportunities out there, and so many companies are willing to help you. Not because they like you. I mean, they may like you, but what they want to do, they want to to advertise and market themselves. Take advantage of that. These companies, they want to spend money to do advertisement. So well, just a quick example. I contacted this company, Peco Plus, I think at that time. And I told them, okay, I'm going for Kuala Lumpur. There was a conference, and I want to get a sponsorship from you guys. I can offer you this. I'll print a bag, and I'll take a bag with your logo, a T-shirt with your logo. Is that okay? They give me 1,000. I went with my friend. We went to KL. We took advantage from the university where they offer us a car and driver. So you guys have so much opportunities out there. Take advantage of that. Don't just blame the university. The university has limits to what they can do. They are teaching you. They have to update themselves, but it's your responsibility. You have to go out there, learn, and make yourself a better person. Because end of the day, you will get out of the university is who you. It's you. So the skills is yours. Just make sure that you take advantage of all the opportunities out there. Thanks. Back to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Alahdal and Ms. Suhana. I think those points were really beneficial for us, especially considering most of the audience here, I believe, are students themselves. And even me, myself, I'm just a fresh graduate and I really need to ponder on those points. I think on top of keeping up with technology and what's happening in the industry, the most important thing to integrate everything is the soft skill. So I think that the answers you gave just now really shed light, especially for all of us here. So I think those were the questions for the forum, and just to let everyone know, we actually have uh, a list of pre-submitted questions from the participants, but most of it has already been answered from the previous session. Both the speakers have already indirectly answered them. So I think we can proceed forward to the most anticipated session, which is the Q&A. And I can see that our audience here are eager to ask the speakers. We can see from the comment section. So maybe I'm going to read the question in the chat box and I'm going to call out the person asking the question. So whoever that person who asks, maybe you guys can turn on your camera and we will allow the host to open the mic for you so you can personally address your questions to the speakers. All right, so let's see what we have in the chat box here. There is a question from a guest here. This person is asking, what do you think universities can do rationally to produce relevant future graduates to address the shifting need of oil and gas companies? Yeah. So maybe Mr. Alahdal or Ms. Suhana can answer this question. I think this person specifically asks, what can the university do to adapt with this current transition? Thank you.
Maybe I can take that. Okay. Yeah, I think what we I mean I'm sure I've seen Mr. Anwaruddin here. He's been involved in universities and he knows. I mean, he's helping universities to keep up with what is happening in the market to change. So the way I look at it is, I think the universities, what they have to do is there is a huge shift in the industry, and that shift is not just, it's not about just going from renewable, because if you look at the shift as going from oil and gas into renewables, so the only way the university can do is to close the faculty of petroleum engineering. Simple. The real shift that is happening is more or less of, there is a huge drive into efficiency, into automation, artificial intelligence, I mean, what you see today is graduate before or people in the past used to do is they need to do all the calculation, everything using hand and by themselves, and they have to figure it out by themselves. Now it's all about softwares. It's all about softwares. It's all about, you just have to put in the data, enter the data, it comes of information. It ended up to be a task of just, you just have to put in input and you get output right away. So the idea of petroleum engineers or a graduate is, it should be more into, critical thinking, because we will have too many machines. And I think I've seen PETRONAS sending some of these robot dogs offshore. And these guys, this machine, what they will be doing is maintenance instead of human. So what will happen is you will have machines doing things that human used to do, but as fresh grad or as university, what we need to do is we have to know to understand that this is the shift is happening. What we need from our student is the machine will be able to do one thing. They will take the information, they will present it to you. They may do some calculation and come up with a result, but the critical thinking or the idea, interpreting the data, making sense of the data is where the thing that will really become the talk of the town in the future. That there will be people who are more into figuring out, is this right or wrong, making sense of things, critical thinking, solving problems, just because you will get the information there, how to make sense of that information or data and how to make a decision. That's the critical skill. So the university have I mean, they will teach you the basics, which is the reservoir, the calculation, all this. These are the basics, but they should also engage the student more into critical thinking, into decision makings. Means that what are the available options that you have and how to make the best decision out of them. In a critical situation, what do? You take the least risk. You have to take a risk, you have to take a hit, but how to make that decision that reduce the risk or reduce the loss. These kind of things that students have to learn, because what you really face, what I face right now, I'm facing right now is we have, I mean, you can't blame the fresh graduate because they have to learn. But what I like to teach those people who work with me is how to make, okay, you have a serious situation right there, how to make a decision that is the best decision out of what you have right there. Because this is what so many, I've seen it, so many people lack this skill of making that decision, critical decisions, critical thinking, making sense of things. Not just, you see, you will see the number, but the problem what we will face is that even in the university, I like one of the exercise, which was they give the lecturer will give us a calculation, a certain number, and maybe pressure, and which the data was wrong, the pressure was wrong. What he wanted to do is he wanted to see whether we can make sense of that, understand that it was wrong. The pressure shouldn't have been that kind of pressure. Why? Because then he understands that we know, we criticize, we how to say, we look at that data, we question it, right or wrong. We can't just, oh yeah, that's it, 1,500 psi. No, it shouldn't have been that. It should have been 500 psi. Why? Because I know that pressure wouldn't have gone that. So you check it and you figure out that the machine is wrong. The pressure should have been that. These are the skills that you will need, and the university have to focus on there. How to focus on the artificial, more into human skills of understanding, of making sense of things, questioning, critical thinking. This is what I see the critical thing. Thanks.
Yeah. So if I can just like add to that, right? For me, what I see are maybe two things, if I could suggest. Firstly, from the application of digital technology, and this is mainly from the perspective that how we actually extract and produce oil and gas today are not the same as what we've done before, and this is where technology comes in, and digital is a big part of it. Today, we are already doing remote monitoring, right? A lot of our platforms are unmanned, right? And when we talk about even maintenance, people are moving from schedule maintenance to risk-based maintenance. So there's a lot of digital application that's relevant, and I think that part of digital technology and automation needs to come in very strongly. But secondly, as again when we talk about sustainable solution and the need for, I think oil and gas is still relevant, but you guys need to talk about how do you produce low carbon solution, right? So even today, when we talk about low carbon solution and moving towards this, research is very critical and important. And even we do partner up with universities to actually produce new areas, new technologies, etc. So today we're talking about CCUS, how to make it commercial. Even when we talk about the utilization of carbon, how do we actually make products or look at how do we make it more viable. So these are some of the things that we could work more with university and things that could be enhanced further.
Thank you, Ms. Suhana and Mr. Alahdal, for that. I believe those were courses that have yet to be thoroughly implemented. And when we talk about the energy transition, I think starting from now itself, we should actually put focus on that to adapt to the changing nature of our energy. So that question was actually from Mr. Fazil. And thank you for the question, Mr. Fazil. And we have another question from Mr. Fazil also. Or maybe Mr. Fazil, do you want to open your camera and speak out your question?
Hey guys, thank you Alahdal and Suhana. I think that was an excellent session. Thank you. And you guys answered as well my question on the universities, what they have to do in order to produce more relevant graduates. My next question is, let me see my questions. It's more for Petronas actually. Yeah, that would be you, Suhana.
Not representing the company, but yeah.
Yeah, no problem, bro. From Malaysia's energy landscape, right? I mean, we know that Petronas is actually aiming for 2050 ambitions, right? So, what can the rest of the energy players within the countries support that, and what is Petronas directions in terms of supporting the other players to support Petronas directions in terms of getting to 2050? Yeah, that will be my questions.
Okay. So I think when we talk about net zero carbon or carbon neutrality, so there are there are many parts about making this happen, but the two main part is how do you actually reduce the emission from your current oil and gas operation. But secondly, how do you actually work on renewable if it will be able to actually provide you emission reduction or carbon offset? So if we go for the first part, right, how do you reduce emission for the current operation? There's a lot of opportunity to partner, looking into technology that will be able to actually give you low carbon solution. And I think a lot of you are aware that a lot of the gas field that we have in Malaysia today that we are exploring has high carbon intensity. So if we could actually look into companies that are able to actually provide a commercially viable technology solution, I think that is something that there's a lot more that we can do, because there's a lot of the other gas field that we have here in the country. There's also opportunity to look into operational excellence, looking at what more that we can do from that perspective, because at the end of the day, ultimately, we need to reduce the carbon intensity that we have here in Malaysia. And more so, because again, Malaysia is a champion. We've got the highest level of carbon intensity compared to any part of the world. If I bring it to the second part, when we talk about renewable solution, and today Petronas have launched our new energy as part of this. How do we actually bring a one-stop cleaner energy solution to the world? So our focus is looking into gas, LNG, as well as renewable. From a renewable perspective, we are doing wind and solar, and as well as battery energy storage, either on a standalone or a hybrid solution. So for us, we are a new player. So there's always opportunity to look into how we could actually, go into new area, new territory. But the other part of that renewable solution, yeah, I've got let it go here. The other part of the renewable is actually hydrogen. And hydrogen is nothing new for Petronas or a lot of us, because when we talk about hydrogen, I mean, from a petrochemical industry, etc., we've been producing grey hydrogen, blue hydrogen, right? But the world is moving towards green hydrogen. So it's about if you're a technology player, if you do, and I mean, if you could, have a very commercially competitive electrolyzer technology that would actually help us bring that, it is a good partnership that we actually see with the industry, even from that perspective. But even so, when we talk about even wind technology, and for a fact that we've been doing solar, but from a wind perspective, there's onshore wind, there's offshore wind. From an offshore wind perspective, there's a lot of synergy from an oil and gas environment as well, because a lot of the, from a wind turbine and a lot of the floating structure that we use for wind today are quite similar to the offshore platform that you see. So you do see a lot of the oil and gas service company that does offshore maintenance are looking into offering the same skill set and opportunity for offshore wind as well. So there are a lot of synergy. There's opportunity to work together, and if you could actually look at this as a partnership within Malaysia consortium, or if we could do this together, there's a lot more that we could actually be doing together. Yeah. Hope that answers it.
That really answered that, actually. Very good answer, actually. That shows how master you are in public speaking. I'm convinced now.
Thank you, Fajal.
Okay, thank you, Sir Fazil, for that question, and also our speakers for addressing the question. Now, I'd like to invite Miss Aina, as she also mentioned, put a question in the chat box. So, Miss Aina, if you want to turn on your camera and your mic, you may do so.
Hi, am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So pertaining to my question, let me give you a bit of context to the background of the question, right? So 2 years ago, I went to this Oil and Money conference in London, and I sought Alahdal's advice and also is a person from SPE Gaia, which is a sustainable energy part of the SPE, advices as well in prior to the conference. So my take is that um, it, about the misconceptions that the public had, right, on Alahdal's debate on the question 2 or question 3 earlier on. So what Johanna also advised me is that we need to educate the public and make them aware that, you know, give trust to the oil and gas industry personnel to carry out this energy for the world. But what can we do individually or a society as a whole to address this awareness for the public? Because right now they are still, you know, attacking both, and, you know, it's always about clean energy, but how exactly can we educate them? I mean, like for us young graduates, we barely are able to make that change, right? So what can need your take on this? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can take that.
Right.
Aina, yeah, thanks a lot for your question. And I think this is the real issue. It's about the misconception that the public has about the oil and gas industry, which I explained previously. I think the first step for you as a graduate, what you need to do is stop panicking, because you give them a reason to continue. Because when I hear a petroleum engineer, fresh graduate, talking about, oh, the oil and gas there will be no more oil and gas. I mean, if you really don't know, if you don't know about your industry, go and read about it. You have to look at how much oil is out there, where are these resources are located, and you have to look at what is the production right now. I mean, if I ask any of you, what is the current barrel per day production today? I mean, just a question. I'm not asking you right now, but think about it. Do you know what is the price of oil right now? What is the consumption of each country? Is it declining, or is it going up or down? These are the things you should seriously. You have to stop listening to the noise. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now, and I have taken it very aggressively on LinkedIn, in a way that when I see a noise, when I see a lie, I just call it as it is, and I call the person themselves in LinkedIn, because I don't like it. And I think you don't have to follow me, you don't have to make problems with people in LinkedIn, but you really have to take that initiative and share with the public. Do you, okay, as a petroleum engineer, do you know how much products, or the healthcare in right now when it is a pandemic? What are all these products that are used to treat people, to help people, save people from death right now? Where are these coming from? The plastic, a lot of products, even medicines, these are coming from oil and gas. So this is the first step, is you need to educate yourself as a representative of the oil and gas industry, to make people aware. If you don't know, you contribute to the problem. That's the first thing I have to say. And don't just take it from the news. There are so many fake news out there. There's so many clickbaits articles that the purpose of these articles is just to make money. They make advertisement. These big CNN and all these big outlet media, they make money out of the articles they write. When they say oil and gas is going to 300 a barrel, they're making money when everybody click on that article. When they're saying that at the end of oil and gas is going to be this and that. When you hear about a country in Europe saying that we ban oil and gas, the first thing I did that time, you know what? You just have to go and check what is the production of that country, oil and gas production. You know how much? 3,000 barrels per day, the production of that country. And go and check the result. They have nothing. And they talk about banning oil and gas, right? Okay, the first thing you need to do is go check the actual data, and you know what is the fake news behind it. So when a country says we're banning oil and gas, there will be no more oil and gas exploration, they don't have oil and gas in the first place. What they are talking about, right? If a country like Saudi Arabia or a country like Malaysia says that we will end oil and gas exploration by 2023, right? Then you have to panic, because that is the real news. But when a country has nothing and they talk about banning oil and gas and no more exploration, just ignore that article. What I did is I pointed out that they have nothing. They shouldn't be talking about this. So the real issue for oil and gas industry is we have people who don't understand their industry. You really need to understand your industry first. You need to educate yourself on what is the world needs, and the world needs oil. The world can't survive without oil. Simply, in the pandemic, in the middle of pandemic, when the whole world is locked down, you know how much the production went down? By 15 million barrels. You can't believe it. All the planes are grounded, the cars are not moving, and we still produce 85 million barrels per day. For what? Because the world needs oil. That's the first thing that everybody has to understand. When you know the facts, and when you go to the sources, go to the real sources, read from companies, go check PETRONAS reports, read how much they're investing in oil and gas. 95% investing in oil and gas, 5% is renewable. Then you know where is the direction that you need to go. Don't just listen to the media. Don't even listen to your father and mother. They're emotional. I'm serious. I'm serious. My father was telling me to go do something else. I never listened to him.
Oh my God, okay.
I am serious. You need to make decisions based on facts. Okay? When you want to decide you want to go there, it has to be based on, yes, I see that this is, father tell you, no, father, I think it's going to go that way. And because this is the fact, Petronas investing in oil and gas, Petronas is awarding oil and gas contracts to ConocoPhillips, to other, they are opening bids for oil and gas. And you're talking about, oh, I'm not going to have a job. The whole fresh graduate, you really have to go out there, learn first. Really, you have to get to know. I mean, ConocoPhillips is going for exploration. Other companies, Sapura, this and that, Inquest. Oh, this is just in Malaysia. It is outside. So
Guyana, talk about Guyana. It's still a whole new exploration, right?
Okay, so you need to learn about your industry first, and then you can educate the public. I think just follow me in LinkedIn.
I should follow you. I think I need to follow you on LinkedIn now, even though I rarely open LinkedIn actually. But okay, if I can just like add a bit on that, right? You know, when all of this happened, I totally agree. Fact and statistic is important. You need to know your content well. But the other part that we always actually bring up and highlight, I think Daniel has actually put it just now, the energy trilemma. Always remember this. In any energy, I don't know, in any country that you're in, when we talk about the energy mix or the need for energy, you've always got people would ask for affordable, accessible, and it has to be sustainable. So when you go to Europe, yeah, I mean, renewable is cheap, it's a lot more accessible, and yep, it meets the sustainability factor. But when you are, for example, in countries like Malaysia, right, when you talk about this three part, affordable, it has to be cheap. And right now, renewable is coming to that, but not yet. Accessible is about having like abundant of the source and being sustainable. So we are a country that is probably 30, 40 years what Europe was before. We are looking into decarbonizing our source of fuel, but our decarbonization starts from coal, right? Whereas when we talk about Europe, they are from gas to renewable. So for us, moving from coal towards something more sustainable, that would be, I'm putting my PETRONAS hat on, is looking into when you talk about a cheaper form of fuel. Coal is still the cheapest at the moment, but gas has come to a point where it is also cheap. But the great thing about gas is the fact that it's also abundant. I mean, Malaysia, we're blessed. We've got so much gas. So it's about how do you extract and utilize that source of energy. And when we talk about gas, it's a lot more sustainable, or it is the cleanest form of fossil fuel today compared to coal, oil, or anything that you see. So from that perspective, the decarbonization today starts with converting all of this, shutting down coal plant and looking into converting coal into gas. But as part of moving towards this energy transition is looking at how gas and renewable can come in, because you will still need that base load. Why renewable has actually not really push through in some of these developing countries, the fact that you would need a sustainable source of energy. Renewable now is cheap, but it doesn't provide you the 24/7 that you need. There's still intermittency. I mean, when the wind is not blowing, when there's no
Sunlight
sun.
and all, yeah.
Yes. So that's why you need battery. But battery has not come to a stage where it is cheap. So that's why when we talk about source of energy, we always talk about it can be renewable and gas as the base load. So it needs to come in hand until we actually see that battery will actually become a cheaper source of energy. So for me, it's about, how do you decarbonize coal towards gas? And then you need to infuse renewable into it until it can actually provide you the 24/7 that you require. So Europe, you can talk about that, but you are where we are. I mean, we are where you are maybe like 30, 40 years ago.
Thank you for the insights.
I think that's also the reason why in PETRONAS you see the upstream, the gas and new energy.
Yeah.
And then you also the downstream.
Okay. All right. Back to you, moderator.
All right, thank you, Ms. Aina. So I think we have come to the end of our session, and I can see that there are quite a few more questions in the chat box. But if I may suggest, maybe these people who are very interested and eager to ask, maybe you guys can approach Ms. Suhana or Mr. Alahdal in LinkedIn. So that would drive a really interesting conversation with you. And unfortunately, due to the time limitation of the event, we now have to wrap this session up. And thank you again to Ms. Suhana and Mr. Alahdal. We hope that this talk has been beneficial to everyone. And again, thank you to our speakers, all the participants and committees for driving such an amazing discussion. I believe that the insights from our speakers have shed lights in areas where we had doubts before, and most importantly, understanding the impact of the energy transition towards the demand of petroleum engineers in the future. All right, so we hope to see all of you again in our next talk. And Ash, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. So before we end, let's proceed to our group photo session. So kindly turn on your cameras so that we can take a group photo together with our panelists today. So Aqil, maybe you can take over right now.
All right, smile. Do we count?
Okay, sorry. You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yeah, should count.
Okay. Have put your best smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to our panelists for taking your time to deliver such an informative and insightful session to our audience today. So dear participants, the link for the feedback form will be posted in the chat box soon. So please kindly fill it up and give us your valuable feedback. Let us know what went well in today's talk and what can be improved. So with that, we have come to the end of our session today. Thank you very much for joining us in this talk. So have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you, speakers. I really felt it was such a short time. We could have, extended it because there's so many questions. Right.
As always, next time.
Yep. We should do this another one.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay, good job, organizers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job,
Suhana.
Alpha.
Alpha team.
You guys did great.
Thank you for everything.
See, we can stop the recording as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one who
Good
has
job,
the
team.
record.
That's good.
Hey, we're
This is
waiting for the
something
Bravo one
from
next week,
Bravo.
huh?
Yeah.
Hey,
That
the
was good.
CCUS topic, I think, is a good introduction for next week, though.